Hello guys, in the previous video we learned about forward rate agreements where two parties agree to exchange a fixed rate for a floating rate. In this video we'll learn that a swap contract is nothing more than a set of forward rate agreements with a fixed rate for every forward rate agreement. So let's just compare the difference between a set of forward rate agreements and a single swap contract. Every forward rate agreement has a fixed rate for its own period. So the first period will be the implied forward rate 0,1. The second will be 1,1. And the third will be 2,1, etc. That means for the floating rate agreements, the long position pays the implied forward rate and the short position returns some floating rate based on the market reference rate. And the payment that the long position makes is different for every period. On the other hand, for a swap contract, there is one single fixed rate F, and the long position pays this fixed rate for every period. What it gets back is still based on the market reference rate and may be different for every period. Now we want the values of a set of forward rate agreements and the value of a swap contract to be the same. So let's say for the first period, we have a zero rate of 2%. For the second period, we have 3%. Last period, we have 4%. Now the way we compute the implied forward rates, for this one it's just 2%. It's the same as the zero rate. For the second one, it's what we would earn at a risk-free rate in 2 years using the zero rate for 2 years, which is 3%, divided by what we would make in the first year, and that would be 4.01%. For the third period, this is what we would earn at a risk-free rate of 4% in 3 years, divided by what we would make in 2 years, and this would be 6.03%. So the way to determine what is an appropriate fixed rate for the swap contract is by comparing the time value of the series of forward rate agreements to the time value of the swap contract. And so if the principal value is 100, then the time value of the first payment is 2% over 1.02. The time value of the second payment is 4.01% over 1.03 squared. And that's because the zero rate of that period is 3%. And the final payment is 6.03 over 1.04 cubed. And for the swap contract, the payments are as follows. Now if the value of the set of forward rate agreements and the value of the swap contract are to be equal at inception, then this big sum needs to be equal to this big sum. So in general, we want this big sum to be equal to this big sum, where here we use the implied forward rates for calculating the time value, and here we use the fixed rate for calculating the time value. Now there's no way to solve this equation for F in any way on the financial calculator, so we're just gonna have to do it by hand, and for this we'll use the discount factor for every period, given by 1 over 1 plus the zero rate for this period to the I. We'll put those discount factor in this column right here. The first one is 1 over 1.02, the second one is 1 over 1.03 squared, and the last one is 1 over 1.04 cubed. And while you're computing these babies, you should use the store button found here and store it in, well, the third one I'm going to store in 3. And if you have stored the first one in 1 and the second one in 2, you can very easily solve this equation. And to solve it, we first look at this big sum, and we can just compute it by multiplying 2 times the discount factor plus 4.01 times the second discount factor and 6.03 times the third discount factor. And if you have stored the discount factors in your calculator, you can get the value from the variable by using the recall button. So I'll do 2 times recall 1 plus 4.01 times recall 2 plus 6.03 times recall 3. Now if you look at this equation right here, you can see that it's just F times the sum of the discount factors. And so if we want to know F, then we divide this sum, so this one here, by the sum of the discount factors. And that would be 3.95%. Now, because of how we computed this F, anyone seeking to exchange its floating rates for a fixed rate will be indifferent to entering a series of forward rate agreements as opposed to entering a swap contract. So in terms of the time value of money, the contracts will be equivalent. So in summary, the swap price, or the par swap rate, which is the fixed rate for the swap contract, equates the present value of the fixed rates for the duration of the contract to the present value of all these forward rate agreements with the implied forward rates. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. So far, so good.